Okay, so we are picking up where we left off earlier by going back to our Terraform configuration so we can add some Terraform blocks that utilize provisioners. And the provisioners that we're going to be utilizing are remote exec and file, because remote exec will allow us to SSH into the EC2, and file will allow us to transfer files over. So since we want to run Ansible playbooks, it would be nice to be able to just transfer that playbook, that inventory from your local environment to GitHub to the control node and over to the um, target node. Is that the only way to do it? No. And that actually reminds me to bring up a point. I'm not exactly sure what Reno will demo tomorrow. I mean, I have this prepared for him, but if he wants to like pivot and improvise, that will happen, I guess. So I haven't heard back from him yet today about what he wants to do, so we'll see. So I'm going to cover the remote exec, the provisioning, and let me just try to get. Okay, I think we're in the right folder here. We don't need this. This was some troubleshooting for remote state earlier. This is, I think we get rid of this too. And this should be the directory we were working in. Okay, this looks like we added this when we were talking about the remote backend. We're not going to run through it now. Maybe we could take a stab at it after demoing the remote exec, but let's go ahead and knock out the remote exec. So I'm gonna go into, okay, here's our target node, here's our control node. This is where we want to utilize remote exec. So let's enter a few lines. Let me also try to pull up my browser or just find where I was. There we go. And what we're going to do is we're going to write provisioner remote dash exec. And this is going to allow us to run some simple bash commands once we exec onto the control EC2. So what are we going to run? We're going to run some commands that will let us A, move over a file, and B, install Ansible. So let's start with moving over the SSH file. Actually, no, let's even go simpler than that. Let's just do a simple print statement. So let's say echo hello world. This has to be in double quotes, I believe, actually. And if it's in double quotes, I'm not sure if I need that. This is bash, so that should be fine. Now I need a reminder. Yep, that's fine. And we are going to use commas to separate our lines. And now I'm going to do something else. I'm going to use PWD just to show that we could use PWD. And from here, we're going to set up some package manager updates. So Amazon Linux 2 utilizes yum as its package manager. So we're going to do a sudo yum update -y to auto approve. And this needs to be double quotes. So let's update that. And then we want to install Ansible from an Amazon Linux extras library. So sudo again, and we're going to call Amazon Linux extras install Ansible 2-y. And let's save. And this is our we won't be able to test this just yet. We need to actually, before we could test this, we need to be able to SSH into this node. And before we could do that, we need to set a control block. So let's now type, it's got to be outside of provisioner, I think. So let's do, actually, no, we need a connection block within provisioner, I think, but outside of the inline. So connection, we are going to set some parameters like a host, and we are going to use the IP address belonging to this EC2. And the type is going to be SSH. That's the type of connection we want to establish. And we are going to sign in as the user EC2 user. And the private key that we're going to need is the key that we created in our workflow earlier. Let me actually double check to make sure we did create that. So if we go back to, what is it? Main.t, no, that's a Terraform file. If we go back to GitHub workflows, tf apply, yes, we did. We created a step to create this ID underscore RSA. This is our SSH key. So we also made sure we put in a location we could recall easily later on. So that's what that is. We can directly set that here, but since we'll be using this multiple times, it'll be better practice to utilize a variable. So let's actually go ahead and create a variable. And it's going to be outside of this resource. It's going to be its own resource. We're going to call it private or SSH key, maybe. And let's see. This needs to be, this is going to have a description. And it's just going to say path to SSH key. And it's going to have a default value, which is going to be that path. Whoops. Force quit my application. My system has run out of application memory. Great. Give me 1 sec. I am recording. Can't close Chrome. Oof. It might be time to upgrade. Okay, we are going to try to power through with whatever memory we have available. So, where was I? We are going to set this path to the path that we were using earlier when we created our SSH key. So that should be the path. We called it ID underscore RSA. And now we can use this variable. Did I not spell this correctly? Or I still have it inside of the resource. So let me get it out of that resource. And just to stay organized, I'm going to separate it from the target node as well. So it's going to be beneath both of those. I'm going to save. I'm going to actually maybe change this name to all lowercase, SSH key. And now I can reference this, right? So instead of a file path here, we are going to say file, and we are going to say variable or var for variable, and we are going to give it the name that we gave it, so SSH underscore key. So let's save that. And now we should be able to remote exec. Let's see. I'm going to save this. I'm going to get status. And get commit AM, so I only have to write 1 command as opposed to 2. And I am going to write a message saying added connection config. And then I'm going to push to my staging branch, which is in my origin remote repository, so I got to specify origin. And if we go over to actions, it should have triggered. So yep, it looks like it's triggering. And let's see if it actually establishes a connection. So init has succeeded, checking for security groups, this succeeded. Now we are running our apply. So far, so good. Okay, while this is happening, let's see. What else can we go over? Let me double check. I think from here, once we establish a connection, we'll be able to create some Ansible files, which we could then copy over to, here we see it's trying to establish connection, that we can copy over to the target node. It looks like it might be hanging. I can't remember how long this took on average the other day. I know eventually at some point, like I would only see 3 of these before it connected. And I think if it lasted more than like 5, 10, 15 minutes, I would just cancel out. So let's think through why this might be hanging and why it might not be working. We're setting our user to EC2 user. Are our permissions correct? So here we have our target ID for, well, that's target. Where's control? We have control set here, and our control group has the 0.0.0 in all of these, so that should be good. Let me think. When I copied over my SSH key, let's see if we can confirm earlier that this worked. Looks like it did. Oh, where are we? Oh no, we're still hanging. All right. While this is running, I'm going to actually head over to AWS. I should terminate the nodes from earlier because I'm not using a remote backend to manage my state. I'm going to delete these. Whoops, that's not what I want. And I am going to manually connect to my control node just to look around. So let's go to connect. Let's copy this. Let's open up our terminal. Let's make sure we are pointing to the right file. So no, not open directory. We want to go from this directory to .ssh. It should be in there. Okay, permission denied. So that's definitely a clue. Let me think. The ID underscore RSA was created inside of, oh, hold on. No associated key pair. This instance is not associated with a key pair. Without a key pair, you can't connect. What did we miss? Why is this not associated with a key pair? Oof, must have missed a step somewhere.
Does it have to be a key pair that you instantiate inside of AWS that is already in AWS?
I I believe so because I'm not creating any new key pairs, but
Your Terraform code. For your instance, you have to write on any VPC security groups. You need to put a key file. I think it's key file or key pair.
yes. Yes. In the security groups. Let me see where was before
No, within the instance resource.
in the instance, right? Okay, yes, you're right. That is what I'm missing. So there it is. That's from yesterday. So let's correct our instances. And I think this is the one that I've been using, so we're going to continue to use that. Let's actually exit out of this build because I don't think it failed on its own, right? It's still going. Yeah, it's still going. So let's wait, no, which one is it? Now I'm getting a little lost. Maybe it did stop. So get up actions. Yep, it stopped. Okay, now that that's done, I'm gonna add this key here. I might as well do it for the target node as well, so I don't forget. So let's do that. Let's save. Let's clear that out. Let's run a Terraform format on this. Where are we? Gotta be inside the Terraform directory. Okay, let's go back up. Get status. Get commit add missing key to instance, and we can push to our remote repository origin and to the branch that we specified in our workflow. So now, hopefully, they'll let us SSH, and we can close down these previous EC2s. Yep, should be good to delete these. And all right, we are now running our Terraform apply. Yeah, that might take a few seconds. Okay, so what we would be doing next once we establish an SSH connection is expanding on our inline code. So right now we have it set up to run sudo yum. Nice, we're connected. We see our hello world, we see our present working directory, and we see that it's running yum update, and it's then going to run this to set up Ansible. So this is pretty much it for the control node. The control node is good to go. It doesn't mean we're done writing this configuration though, because within this same remote exec, we could use this control node to pass along the SSH key to the target node. Actually, I'm thinking through this again. I don't think that's right. We have the SSH key available in our GitHub Actions environment. It's not the target node that requires it. It's the EC2, the control node that requires it. But it's got to connect from inside the node environment, the EC2, not the Terraform environment. So we're going to be copying the file inside of GitHub Actions workspace over to the control node EC2. And we're going to do that by, I mean, there's a few ways to do, like, there are many ways to do it, right? But if we want to just get it done with, like quick and dirty, we could just use some simple bash commands. So let's, similarly to earlier, we're gonna do a make directory, and we're gonna use -p to prevent any errors in case this folder path already exists. And now we're going to do home EC2 user, because that's the directory that we would see inside the EC2. And we are going to create this inside its own SSH directory. And it's throwing an error here because I'm missing a comma. So let me add that comma. Let me add another comma here. And now we could use touch to create an empty. I actually don't think I need this line, to be honest. So I'm gonna type it out, and then I'm gonna comment it out. But EC2-user /.sh, and let's name this key something else so we don't get confused, or I don't get confused, I should say. I'm gonna spell this correctly. I'm gonna add another comma, and like I said, I'm gonna comment it out. I don't think we actually need it, because we're going to use a redirect instead, right? So we're going to say echo the contents of this file that we have been using, the SSH key that we created inside of the GitHub Actions workspace. And that is the same path expression that we've been using for the connection block. So we're going to call a variable, and we're going to pass in the path, or the name of the variable, actually, because the variable contains the path. So file var SSH key. I think I have like an extra set of, yeah, I don't know why I did that. This needs to be .sh key, not parentheses. Okay, so we are going to echo this and then redirect the output of that into our PM file. So just like above, ec2-user.sh.ansible.pem. That looks good. Let's add a comma, save, and we are going to run chmod so that we could not run into any sort of permissions issues when trying to run some commands. So ansible.pem. All right, save. Let's check this out. Looks like our run succeeded completely, no errors. This means that it should have installed Ansible correctly. Now, because we're confirming something else now. We're just trying to confirm the creation of this new PM file, right? We don't need to be running these sudo installs every single time we are validating something else, right? So we're going to comment it out, and we'll comment it back in when we're ready to actually utilize Ansible. So let's comment that out. Honestly, don't need these either, but let's keep hello world at least. And I'm going to save. I'm wondering if there's anything else I'm forgetting that we should do. This will create the file. We can confirm that the file exists. And maybe we should just go ahead and transfer it over to. No, not yet. Let's save. Let's save. Let's just do this one step at a time, and let's make sure this works. Git status, git commit perform. Oh, that's message. AM, because I want to add before I commit. And I'm going to say, what do we do? Created PM, enter, git push origin staging. Now let's let that run. And while that's running, we are going to start on Ansible commands. Okay, so I don't need to do that yet. We're going to need an inventory and a playbook. And let's see. Okay, so let's write our inventory file. So to write our inventory file, you know the syntax. We have like a name inside of square brackets. So let's use echo again with redirect to do that. So we're going to say Ansible target. That's going to be the name of our the node that we're targeting. Let's not forget the other apostrophe. And we are going to redirect this into an inventory file. So let's just toss it in the EC2 user folder, inventory.ini. You could just do inventory without the .ini, but I like to have the ini in there. Now we have our inventory, or the first part of our inventory. Next, we're going to need the IP, right? So let's say echo, we'll use the $ and curly brackets to call a variable. And here we're going to say from the Amazon instance called target, we're going to grab the IP. And let's make sure that that is the correct name of the instance, right? So instance target. And once it's created, it will have an IP. I need to add a comma here. Let's check on our build while, right, I could minimize that, look up here. Okay, this succeeded as well. Succeeded. I did not, I don't think I added any new logs, so I don't think we're going to be able to confirm in any of these that it did create. So we're going to assume that it did. We could manually SSH onto that node to check, but it's getting late, so let's try to just blaze through this. We are going to trust that it's there. And now we are going to, right, we got to add the IP address to the inventory file. So we do this, and then we say Ansible SSH private key file equals the PEM that we created and moved over. So that's going to be this. And what else do we need? We're gonna need some arguments. I ran into this and found out that I had to pass in a strict host key checking argument, because if you don't, you know how when you try to SSH, it shows the fingerprint and then it asks you if you're sure you want to sign on. We don't want to do that. We don't want that to pop up. If that pops up, then our flow is just going to hang indefinitely while it's waiting for a prompt response. So we're going to ensure that we don't have strict host checking enabled. So let's pass in another argument. And this argument is, the syntax gets really funky here, because you're like just stringing together a bunch of these arguments in one line. But let's make sure we're not creating any typos along the way. We're going to say Ansible SSH underscore common args equals -o strict host key checking equals no. Now, again, this is not the only way to do this. When I was combing through Stack Overflow and documentation the other day, there were other approaches that I saw. This is the one that I went with. So feel free to experiment if you want to try another method, because this definitely isn't pretty. It's not the, I guess, greatest way to do this. So we're gonna, yeah. we're going to then type in user inventory.ini because we are transferring this argument into this inventory file. So let's, all these double quotes inside double quotes makes me so uncomfortable, but we'll see if that works. From here, we can run a ping to see if it's succeeded. So let's go ahead and type Ansible post key checking equals false. Again, I said there were multiple ways to do it. I don't remember if I did like any strict testing as to whether this line works without the other one or vice versa. I just threw them both in there. We could do some experimentation later on to see what's actually relevant, and then we could just choose one. This is the cleaner of the two, so I would go with this if we confirm that it's all we need to bypass the strict checking. And let's worry about that later. We're going to focus on getting this ping so we can confirm whether or not the connection works. So -m ping, and let's save. We got to comment these back in because we're going to need Ansible, I believe. Yeah, so let's comment those back in. That could stay commented out because we saw that we didn't need it. So I'm just going to delete it altogether. We get rid of this as well. I'm going to save. Git status, git commit AM. What did I just do? Oh, create inventory root inline. So git push origin stg. All right, let's let that run. Okay, we're about at the end of it here. I think for my demo, all I did was create a very, very simple Ansible playbook, one that runs a shell script. I don't think I have those pushed to the curriculum repository because I was hoping to have more time to write out something a little more complicated, but we'll see. I'm going to push all the changes I have tonight, and I'll check in with Reno and Preston to see what their thoughts are for their days. Okay, let's check in on our latest build. We are in our Terraform apply. Oh, I haven't checked. I know we're past time, by the way, so it's being recorded. If you need to leave, go ahead and leave. And I'll just power log. We're almost done anyway, so. Okay. Once this finishes, we'll be able to see some logs pertain from Ansible, and that should let us know whether or not it was able to run the inventory. From here, we would add another command similar to the first, but instead of running this Ansible all command, we're going to run an Ansible playbook command. So Ansible playbook -i because we still want to pass in the inventory. And we don't need to specify all because we're really just targeting one target, and that's specified in the inventory. And what we want to pass in instead of a ping is the playbook URL. And we don't actually have that, but we could just type it out so you see what it will look like. So EC2 user deploy Flask app, for example. Let's say that was the name of my playbook. That's what I would put there. Now, when I actually want to get that playbook up, I can use another provisioner file to actually push that file up. So let's do outside of this provisioner block, but still within this control resource. We'll do a new provisioner. We're going to call it file. We're going to create some curly brackets, and this file is going to have a source and a destination. Its source is going to be Ansible / flask.s. Oh, sorry, wrong file. Ansible, what is it? Deploy flask app.yaml. So this file would exist inside of our repository. We will push it to the control node and then to the target node through this provisioner block. And we'll also set a destination. So destination is going to be on the EC2, deploy flask app.yaml. So let's actually go back over the source. We are going to have this in a repository, right? So if we have it in a repository and we push it, when the GitHub Actions workflow runs, it's going to run that first action checkout v4, right? That action checkout v4 is going to take everything inside of the repository and include it within our workspace. And look at that, we are installing Ansible. Oh wait, no, we've already looked at that. So let's let that finish. We want to establish a connection just like we did with the other provisioner. We want to do it inside the provisioner block. And we are going to say, actually, it's pretty much going to be all the same stuff. So let me just copy paste this. Okay, that looks good. My format is sloppy, so I'm going to go run Terraform FMT. I wonder if I could pass in a path. I've never tried this, I don't think. Oh, nice. It worked. Okay, cool. So we just formatted this and let's check on. Oof, we got an error. Unexpected in the file. Oof. So where did this happen? Okay. But it was installing. We got past this earlier. I think this is still the install. So within our remote exec step, inside of, so we have a missing match for an apostrophe somewhere. I wonder if it's in one of these new commands that we wrote. It's got to be, I think. So the last thing we tested was the creation of the PEM file, right? Oh. Yep. So it failed once we added these new lines. So let's see, what does this do? This command. Oh, this was for creating the inventory file. And it's the really ugly command that I was feeling iffy about. Got an apostrophe here, apostrophe there, so those match. This looks like an extra apostrophe here. Doesn't have any matching thing. Let me double check my code from the other repository. Which one is that's the wrong folder. Maybe this. No, that's a workflow. Maybe this. Okay. That looks very similar. Oh, okay, I see. I didn't need to end it so soon. Okay, gonna save that. Instead, just commit am. Whoops. As you could tell, as you could probably tell, I'm getting a little tired. What am I doing? I am writing a commit message. This is called get rid of move apostrophe. Like know how to spell that word. I'm gonna get pushed to our staging branch. And hopefully this works. All right, so while we wait for that, let's see. We added this command. So what we would also want to do is make sure that this actually exists, right? So we're passing it in from, what was the source? Ansible deploy flask app.yaml. So for the source, this path is the path inside of the GitHub Actions workspace. This destination is the path within the EC2. So within the workspace, since we're using the checkout actions, the path, the folder hierarchy in the workspace should essentially match what we have inside of our repository, right? So we've got a Terraform folder. That's the workspace I selected. So that's where I'm going to put the Ansible directory. You could put it anywhere. If I put it in the same level as this Terraform file here, we would simply just move up one folder when we write out our path. But I'm going to toss it inside of Terraform. So make Terraform Ansible. Created Ansible. Let's now create a file inside of that. And it's going to be called deploy flask app.yaml. Let's see. I don't think I got this part inside the README yet. So I am going to just grab it from my previous project. So this is a starting point for the playbook. I think some of it is actually unnecessary. So let's take a look at that. We are setting a name. We're specifying hosts of all. I don't think we need that. We don't need become yet, but we might need it later based on the commands that we eventually end up running. So I'm going to leave it there. I was trying to clone down an external repository, and I was running into issues, so we're not using that. I set an app directory for project. Okay, this looks a little familiar now. Right, this was the very first thing that we demoed today. This was the Flask application where we ran some unit tests inside of the GitHub Actions workspace. So that's what that repo is. And if you remember, or if you don't remember, the app directory was called project. We used that dunder init to specify that we wanted to treat that folder like a package. And we use the same version that our interpreter was pointing to. If we click on a Python file, my interpreter tells me I'm using 3.12.4. And we set requirements, which is just our requirements.txt file. So those are our variables. And then for our tasks, we have, which is a very common start to a flow. We want to update our package manager. So in this case, we are calling yum, and we are installing some dependencies in the next task. We need to set up dependencies for, well, for sure for Python. We may not need to for Git anymore, especially if we're not going to be cloning down an external repository. And I'm looking at this right now, and I'm a little confused. We're running this playbook. Oh, this is right. Okay, this is the shell script. I see. No, this makes sense now. We are going to move over a shell script from, again, our local directory into the GitHub Actions workspace, into the control node, into the target node. So that's why I have this here. You don't need to do all that. Whatever flow you want to use to set up your Django, or not Django, your Flask application, your Python Flask application, go ahead and do that. This was just an example of what could be done. So that's what I'm doing. That means I have to also add a Flask.shell script at some point. So before we do that, let's check on our build, which looks like it failed. Ooh. It's a different error though, so that's good. We made progress. We got past the failure earlier, so we see that we're successfully able to ping the target node, but it can't find this playbook because it doesn't exist. We wrote out the command before we actually added the playbook, so that's why that failed. With this playbook existing, if it's passed successfully into the instance using this provisioner block, this would succeed, and then we'd be able to move on. Okay, where's everybody at? It is 10 o'clock. Does anybody feel like, yeah, give me some feedback here.
Well, I thought that was strange there because I thought that the nature of the Terraform files is that it doesn't matter what order they were written. So even if that came before, it would still.
Right, but I think when we push this particular when we push this, I don't think we actually have the file, right? We wrote the command out, we pushed, and then we created this.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what we were doing. So if I let's see, if I now add this directory which contains the file and git commit am. Let me make sure though that everything's correct here. So we're going to be grabbing from Ansible this playbook where you want to toss it inside of here and git commit am add playbook. So now we are going to add the playbook, git push origin stg. And that should probably take another 3 minutes to run to get to that point, because that's how long this run took. And all right, until then, let's talk. Anybody have any questions or feedback so far?
I'm definitely going to have to go back over all of it. I'm pretty tired. It's kind of starting to run together, but I see what you're doing, but I'm going to have to go over the steps again to make sure I do understand.
All right, that's totally fine. All of these steps will be listed out in the repository, and you'll have not just me explaining it, but you'll also have Reno and Preston explaining different parts. You could ask them. So like with all the different ways we explain things, you should be,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, though.
Of course. What I'm here for. All right, let's see. It's still, all right, it's still creating. Yeah, I'm thinking this should succeed. And even if it doesn't, I think you get the gist of it, right? You all see how we're able to run the Ansible playbooks or Ansible commands, which will let us run the playbook. Okay. All right. Is there anything else? If we were going to create that shell script, we could just copy this block and specify whatever we want to name that shell script. So let's pretend it's that. And again, you don't even have to do this. If you want to run all the necessary commands from Ansible from the playbook, which is probably the right thing to do, you could do that. But also, if you don't like Ansible and you'd rather just run commands from Bash, then that's what this shell script can do. So again, more than one way to skin a cat. All right, the rest of that stays the same. I don't need to save because we're really just waiting on this last build. While we're waiting, one thing I could do to be productive is delete all these instances that we're just spamming because I was negligent about setting up a remote state. All right, so I'm gonna leave these last two. Delete these. Let's check on our progress. Still creating. I'm trying to think through if there's anything else that we need to bring up. For the assessment, aside from this, you'll be setting up you won't be setting up a Flask application like you are in the challenge. You'll be setting up a much more complicated app. Maybe not a much more complicated app, but it's going to be similar to the first assessment. It's going to be one of Chandra's apps.
Will presentation be pretty much the same as last time, where it's one-on-one with the diagram, the
Yeah.
architecture?
Yeah, I'll be pretty much the same thing. Yeah, everything that is in this challenge should prepare you for the assessment. With the exception being some of the stuff that might be required for the application, Chandra's application, but you should already be familiar with that from the previous assessment. So like setting up GUnicorn, connecting a database, your database of choice. The new stuff is really the Terraform and Ansible. And GitHub Actions is actually, I think it's optional. So yeah, Terraform and Ansible are the big things for the assessment. Right. I would say the advantage to utilizing GitHub Actions, like in addition to like the familiarity of it, is just, I think, speeding up the troubleshooting flow. It's nice to be able to just rerun all of this and have that automated. Makes troubleshooting a little easier. You can multitask, or not really multitask, but I guess parallel tasks, switch back and forth while you're waiting on builds, for example. Okay, what is all this? It's looks like it's at the Ansible setup part. So we are on the EC2. Looks like we're running the Ansible setup command. And hopefully it will actually trigger the playbook so we could see some of the commands from the playbook running. Ooh. Even if it fails at the playbook, which I think it will because we never created this flask.sh, but we might have saved that after the push. It's all blurring for me as well, so I don't know. All right, more Ansible setup. All right, that's completed. Okay, ping is successful and it failed around the same place. So I wonder if, yeah, it couldn't find the deploy Flask app again. So I'm pretty sure in this PR we did add it. Yeah, we added the playbook, Terraform, Ansible, the path looks correct. So why it failed, I'll have to do a bit of digging, but I don't want to keep you all any longer. Hope you all aren't too stressed about the assessment. I personally think you'll do fine. Everyone did a great job on the first assessment. Oh, did you all finally have your retro on Saturday?
Oh, I completely forgot about that. I think we all
No,
forgot about it.
Oh, I thought Chad was going to run for sure this time. Yeah, we'll we'll get around to it. Even if we have to do like a double retro, but yeah. This is great. Thank you all for your time, for staying afterwards. And
thank you. And good luck the rest of this week. And actually, Julie, since I won't see you or talk to you, happy 4th, stay safe and all that. And see you next week.
no, and yeah, that's a very great reminder. Happy 4th, everyone, and I'll see you all next week.